A woman often does not realize the true value of a good man until she is confronted with the possibility of losing him forever. When a man who has shown patience, loyalty, emotional stability, and genuine sincerity finally reaches his limit, something profound happens inside her psychology. It is not simply regret, it is fear. A deep, unsettling fear that she has pushed away one of the rarest types of men she will ever encounter. A good man is not defined by weakness or blind devotion. He is defined by integrity, calm strength, and consistency. He shows up when he says he will, he listens, he supports, he chooses peace over drama, and he communicates instead of playing emotional games. These qualities in modern relationships are far more uncommon than most people want to admit. When a woman realizes she has taken such qualities for granted, the fear hits her at a level she cannot easily ignore. What she fears most is not the loss of a boyfriend or partner. It is the loss of stability, safety, and emotional grounding. A good man becomes a psychological anchor. He represents direction, purpose, and a calm presence that naturally regulates her emotional system. Women may not articulate it, but they feel it deeply. Being with a good man makes them more secure, more feminine, and more grounded. When she hurts him through disrespect, betrayal, emotional manipulation, or indifference, she expects him to chase, because many men do. Many men, when wounded, beg, cling, or try desperately to win her back. But a good man, once pushed too far, does the opposite. He withdraws, not out of anger, but out of self-respect. And that is where her fear begins. She realizes that the man she assumed would always be there suddenly isn't. His silence becomes louder than any argument. His absence becomes heavier than his presence ever was. The moment he stops trying is the moment she confronts the truth. She misjudged him. She mistook kindness for neediness. She mistook patience for weakness. She mistook loyalty for dependency. And now she is left facing the reality that he was none of those things. He was strong enough to walk away, disciplined enough to protect his heart, and wise enough to understand his worth. Women fear losing a man with emotional stability because such men are extremely uncommon. A good man doesn't react impulsively, he doesn't seek revenge, and he doesn't lower himself to toxic game. Instead, he holds himself with dignity. He chooses silence over chaos, distance over drama, and healing over revenge. That level of restraint is unsettling for a woman who expected an emotional explosion. The calmness becomes a mirror, reflecting her own behavior back at her. She sees clearly, often for the first time, how her actions contributed to the downfall. This realization brings guilt, confusion, and fear. Fear that she broke something she can't rebuild. Part of the fear also comes from scarcity. In a world where dating culture is filled with inconsistency, emotional immaturity, cheating, manipulation, and broken communication, a good man is truly rare. Women know this on a subconscious level. They may not openly admit it, but they feel the difference between a man who is temporarily nice and a man who is genuinely virtuous. A good man's presence makes her feel safe. A good man's wisdom makes her feel understood. A good man's emotional control allows her to let her guard down. Losing that is not like losing any other man. It feels like losing a part of her foundation. She also fears the moment his emotional detachment becomes permanent. At first, she may think the distance is temporary, that he just needs time, that he will come back because he always has. But when she sees him choosing peace, choosing progress, choosing himself, she realizes something terrifying. He has outgrown the version of her that hurt him. And even worse, she may not have the ability to become the version he would choose again. That fear, that she lost him not because she wasn't enough, but because she wasn't willing to value him when she had him, creates a deep emotional wound. The fear intensifies when she reflects on how he treated her. A good man remembers birthdays, checks on her emotional well-being, supports her goals, forgives mistakes, and nurtures growth. He invests deeply. He does not love casually. When she loses the love of a good man, she loses more than affection. She loses structure, support, companionship, and emotional safety. She knows that most men will not treat her with the same level of commitment or integrity. She knows that it may take years, or perhaps forever, to find someone who matches his emotional caliber. That scarcity creates anxiety, regret, and longing. She fears losing his energy, his presence, his attention, and the version of herself she was when she was with him. Because a good man brings out the best in a woman, her softness, her nurturing side, her vulnerability. When he leaves, she doesn't just lose him, she loses the version of herself that flourished in his presence. One of the deepest emotional fears a woman feels after hurting a good man is the possibility that he will be replaced by someone who values him more than she did. This fear isn't superficial or rooted simply in jealousy. It comes from a psychological understanding, sometimes conscious, sometimes subconscious, that men with genuine integrity, emotional intelligence, and loyalty are rare. When a woman realizes she may have pushed away such a man, the idea that another woman could step into the role she took for granted becomes almost unbearable. It forces her to confront not only the loss of him, but also the recognition of her own mistakes. This fear begins the moment she senses that his energy is no longer centered around her. A good man, when hurt, doesn't immediately seek revenge or try to prove a point. He simply withdraws and reclaims his dignity. He shifts his focus back to himself, his goals, his passions, and his growth. And when a woman sees that shift, it signals something frightening. He is no longer emotionally anchored to her. That emotional detachment is the first sign that he is becoming available to someone else, someone who might truly appreciate him. Suddenly, the idea that he would stay loyal despite being hurt or remain emotionally stuck begins to shatter. She starts imagining scenarios, sometimes obsessively. She wonders if another woman will appreciate his calmness, his consistency, his deep level of care. She imagines someone else receiving the good morning texts, the emotional stability, the thoughtful gestures, the long conversations, the protective presence, everything she once had and didn't recognize the value of. The thought alone can feel like a direct attack on her self-worth, not because she thinks she owns him, but because she realizes she never fully understood what she had. The fear grows when she acknowledges that another woman might be smarter, kinder, more feminine, more respectful, or more emotionally mature. This comparison is not about insecurity in the typical sense. It's about realizing that someone else might treat him the way he deserved to be treated all along. A woman knows that if a good man finds someone who genuinely values his presence, he will give that woman the best version of himself, because he always does when he feels respected and appreciated. The thought that another woman will receive that version of him is painful, because it highlights the contrast between how she treated him and how he should have been treated. Another layer of fear comes from the emotional bond she once felt with him. Even if she took him for granted, she still relied on his energy, his reassurance, his calmness, his consistency. Losing that is already difficult, but imagining another woman stepping into that emotional space creates a sense of emotional displacement. She feels replaced not just as a partner, but as the center of his emotional world. It makes her question whether she will ever find someone with the same depth, patience, strength, and devotion. She starts remembering the moments she overlooked, the times he defended her, supported her, listened to her, forgave her. And each memory becomes a reminder that someone else might now receive that same level of care. The fear intensifies when she sees him leveling up. When a good man heals, he upgrades. He improves his body, mind, finances, friendships, discipline, and overall lifestyle. He becomes more confident, more selective, and more aligned with his purpose. A woman knows that a man in this state becomes extremely attractive to other women. His emotional stability, combined with newfound boundaries and growth, makes him stand out even more. She realizes that she not only lost him, but she also lost access to the powerful version of him that Heartbreak helped shape. And the fear that another woman might receive that evolved version of him becomes almost haunting. This feeling is amplified by the realization that a good man does not jump into relationships casually. If he chooses someone else, it means he found genuine connection, something she once had but didn't protect. This truth stings because it forces her to accept that she failed to meet him at the emotional level he offered. Worse, she now sees that someone else might be capable of giving him the emotional warmth, respect, and cooperation that she withheld. A deeper psychological fear emerges when she imagines him being truly happy with another woman, not just temporarily excited, but peaceful. Fulfilled, supported, respected, loved the way he deserved, she knows that kind of relationship will close the door forever, because once a good man experiences a relationship that aligns with his emotional needs, he never returns to the person who caused him pain. This fear is not rooted in possessiveness, but in regret for not recognizing his value, for not matching his effort, for not healing her own wounds before damaging someone who genuinely cared. She begins to question her choices, her emotional patterns, and her behavior. She wonders why she didn't appreciate him when she had the chance. She wonders why she allowed ego, immaturity, or emotional games to ruin something meaningful. And then she wonders whether she will ever meet a man like him again. A good man is not replaceable in the emotional sense. His presence creates a specific emotional environment, a sense of peace, safety, trust, and direction. Losing that environment changes a woman's inner world, but watching him give that same environment to another woman is what breaks her. Because it confirms two painful truths. He moved on, and someone else became what she wasn't willing to be. One of the most profound and painful fears a woman experiences after hurting a good man is the fear of being seen as the source of chaos rather than the victim. Throughout many relationships, women like men often convince themselves that their reactions, actions, or decisions were justified. Maybe they believed they were protecting themselves. Maybe they acted out of insecurity. Or maybe they assumed the man would tolerate poor behavior because he always had. But when a good man finally steps back, sets boundaries, or walks away, her entire perspective begins to shift. What once felt justified now feels uncomfortable, exposed, and undeniably real. For the first time, she is forced to confront herself, not the version she presents to others, but the version responsible for hurting someone who genuinely cared. A good man does not dramatize when he is wounded. He does not scream, manipulate, or attempt to flip the narrative. He responds with maturity, clarity, and dignity, and ironically, that silence becomes the loudest mirror a woman will ever face. When he withdraws his emotional energy, she loses the comforting illusion that she was always the one fighting the hardest or giving the most. She begins to see that he wasn't the cause of chaos, he was the one absorbing it. His absence reveals his role in her life with painful clarity. He was the stability, not the instability. And this realization hits her with a fear she cannot easily escape. Being exposed as the source of the problem forces her to examine her behavior in ways she previously avoided. She begins replaying past arguments, remembering moments where he tried to communicate calmly while she reacted impulsively. She recalls times he forgave her, remained loyal, or chose understanding over anger. When she compares that to her actions, disrespect, emotional inconsistency, manipulation, betrayal, or indifference, she recognizes that the imbalance was real. And this recognition creates a heavy emotional burden because it is no longer possible to blame him, the situation, or external excuses. The accountability lands directly at her feet, and with it, a fear of being judged by the very man she once believed would tolerate anything. This fear intensifies because good men rarely portray themselves as victims. They do not broadcast the harm done to them. They don't tell friends or family. They don't smear her name. They quietly distance themselves and protect their peace. This quiet withdrawal forces her to confront the truth alone, without a war, without drama, without a messy breakup. It is a silent form of accountability that leads to deep introspection. She realizes that he left not because he wanted to hurt her, but because he finally acknowledged his own worth. And that knowledge makes her reflect on why she didn't acknowledge it sooner. A woman also fears being seen as the source of chaos because it shatters the narrative she built about herself. Many people, men and women alike, carry stories about who they believe they are: caring, loyal, nurturing, fair. When her actions contradict that self-image, it creates internal conflict. She feels shame because she didn't just hurt a man. She hurt a good man, someone whose intentions were pure. And hurting someone good forces her to question her emotional maturity, her wounds, her trauma patterns, and her choices. This self-reflection is painful because it means admitting that she may have repeated behaviors she once promised herself she'd never do. Another piece of the fear comes from knowing that he sees her clearly, not the idealized version, not the curated version, but the real version. A good man observes quietly, he pays attention, he notices patterns. When he finally steps away, it is not out of confusion, it is out of clarity. And she fears that clarity. She fears that he now sees her flaws, insecurities, defensiveness, and emotional volatility for what they truly are. She fears that he sees the immaturity she tried to hide or the emotional games she used to feel in control. Being seen in this honest light feels like emotional exposure, and exposure creates fear. She also fears the judgment of time. Over time, memories sharpen. The longer he is away, the clearer the truth becomes for her. During the relationship, she may have justified her action. But after losing him, those justifications begin to crumble. She starts recognizing where she overreacted, where she acted out of ego, where she pushed him away when he was trying to come closer. And that recognition often turns into guilt, not the shallow kind, but the deep, lingering kind that follows her when she's alone. There is also the fear that he will remember her as the woman who brought negativity into his life. She doesn't want to be remembered that way. She doesn't want him to think of her as emotionally unstable, disrespectful, or toxic. Even if she acted out of her own wounds, she fears that he sees her as someone who does more harm than good. And that fear is heavy because good men rarely speak badly, even when they have been hurt deeply. His silence makes her wonder what he truly thinks, what he truly felt, and whether she permanently damaged his ability to trust or love. Finally, this fear is intensified by the knowledge that she may not get another chance to rewrite the narrative. A good man, once he reaches his limit, rarely returns to the situation that broke him. He heals, he grows. He moves forward, and as he does, she remains stuck with the version of herself she was when she hurt him. The fear that this version, her worst moments, will be the lasting impression he carries forever is devastating. One of the deepest, most haunting fears a woman faces after hurting a good man is the fear that he will rise, evolve, and level up without her, and never look back. This fear does not come from ego alone, nor from possessiveness, but from a deep psychological understanding of what a good man becomes when he channels pain into growth. A good man does not self-destruct after heartbreak. He does not spiral into chaos, revenge, or desperate pursuit. Instead, he transforms. He uses the pain as fuel, redirecting his emotional energy into self-improvement, discipline, purpose, and personal evolution. When a woman realizes that the man she once hurt is becoming a stronger, more confident, more fulfilled version of himself, it triggers a powerful emotional response, fear that she will no longer be part of the life he is now building. During the relationship, she might have overlooked his potential, taken his stability for granted, or assumed he would always remain the same. But heartbreak lights a fire inside a good man. He begins to upgrade every aspect of his life, his health, finances, mindset, spirituality, social circle, and ambitions. He becomes sharper in his boundaries, wiser in his emotional choices, and more guarded with his heart. She sees him taking control of his life in ways she had never seen before, and suddenly she realizes that the version of him she hurt is not the version he is becoming. This new version, more disciplined, more focused, more confident, feels unfamiliar, almost out of reach. And that distance terrifies her. A woman also fears his growth because it exposes the emotional imbalance that once existed between them. She remembers the version of him who tolerated disrespect, forgave too easily, loved too deeply, and accepted too little in return. But the upgraded man does not tolerate poor treatment anymore. His self-worth becomes his armor, his clarity becomes his compass. He no longer excuses behavior that diminishes him, nor does he invest in people who drain his emotional energy. This transformation makes her realize something heartbreaking. The man she hurt will never again allow her to hurt him in the same way. She has lost the privilege of access, and with that realization comes fear that she will never again be close to him, not emotionally, mentally, or spiritually. Another layer of fear comes from watching him achieve the kind of peace she could never give him. A good man, once free from emotional chaos, stabilizes quickly. He builds routines, cuts off toxic influences, explores new opportunities, and aligns his life with purpose. When she sees him thriving, laughing more, focusing better, looking healthier, building new connections, pursuing passions, it creates a painful contrast. She becomes aware that she was not the source of his peace. She was the storm, and now that the storm has passed, his life becomes brighter. This truth cuts deeply because it reveals that his happiness was never dependent on her. It was merely suppressed by the emotional weight she added. She also fears the possibility that his new life does not include her at all. The more he grows, the less he looks back. Good men rarely regress. They do not revisit emotional chaos or reopen doors that once caused them pain. Once they rise, they continue moving forward. She sees him building a future she was once meant to be part of. New goals, new friends, new opportunities, maybe even new love. And this creates a haunting fear that the story is truly over, not paused, not repairable, over. The fear intensifies when she imagines him giving his improved self to another woman. The stronger, wiser, more confident version of him, the version her actions helped create, may become someone else's blessing. She might see him posting moments of joy, progress, or connection, and she wonders if another woman is now receiving the stability and care she once neglected. She understands that the good man she lost has become a man many women will admire, desire, and respect. And if he chooses someone new, she knows she will never be able to compete with the version of herself who caused him pain. But the deepest fear comes from a simple, painful truth. He no longer needs her. When she hurt him, she may have believed that his love would anchor him indefinitely. She assumed he would struggle to move on, that he would come back, or that he would always compare others to her. But instead, he channeled his hurt into resilience. He grew stronger than the version of himself that loved her. His self-worth is no longer negotiable. His heart is no longer accessible, and his future is no longer something she can influence. This realization strikes at the core of her emotional identity. For the first time, she is not the center of his world. She is not his motivation, his comfort, or his priority. He has found something more powerful, himself. And nothing is more threatening to someone who took a good man for granted than watching him become someone she no longer has the privilege to love.